Thank you so much for joining today. We still have a lot of attendees getting logged in. Just kind of touch base a little bit. Today, the webinar, we're going to be covering a basic introduction training to the mobile admin product, which will also then cover part of the mobile work order. So we'll be doing a general overview today. Again, please be patient, just a few more minutes. We're allowing everybody to get logged in. You do have a questions panel over to the right. You can throw in some questions or say hi. Make sure that you guys can hear me and that the audio is okay. Give a thumbs up there. We're just have a couple more minutes here and we'll begin the presentation.
Hi, this is Mark Woodard from MediMizer, and welcome to the training. If you want to test out the questions, just put either how you use MediMizer or put what is it, one thing you would like to learn today. And that way you'll make sure you know where the questions are. And you might expand on, like, do you add equipment? Do you run reports? Do you, I open work orders, close work orders, so anything that just areas you use in the software. Thank you.
All right, looks like we have a few people already logged in and attending here, so we're going to go ahead and get started. So thank you. Welcome to the webinar. This is going to be covering the MediMizer mobile administration, mobile work order. This is Tanya from MediMizer. Mark and Chandler are also joining. Enter any questions into the question panel, but we'll go ahead and get started here on our basic overview beginner training for mobile admin that also will cover mobile work order. All right, so I brought up the mobile administration login screen. So the mobile administration, you're probably very familiar, is our browser-based application. So I'm going to go ahead and get logged in here. I'm signing in with my employee code and selecting my database. I don't currently have a password. So I'm going to start here at the login screen. Notice when I logged in, the relational view came up. You have a couple little icons over here to the top right. I could switch over to the admin view, and I can also go into a global search. So this is your admin view. It just gives you kind of your basics for your performance for this month, your equipment statistics, some of your work order statistics. And then you have that relational view available as well as a global search. Now, what the global search does in MediMizer is it gives you the opportunity to search every table in the database. So I'm going to narrow this down. I'm going to put in here WELC. You need at least 4 characters to perform a search. But this will go through, and again, this particular search does take a little bit of time because it is looking at every table in MediMizer. But once it loads, what you'll notice is that you're going to see here that it finds that same 4-letter combination in all of the different areas that it found it in MediMizer. So you can see it found it on a manufacturer code, and it found it on a vendor code. And if I keep going down here, it was also found in a work order. And you can see it was in the service requested section. And then if we come through, we can keep going, we would find here's that same 4-letter combination. So again, it's a global search. It searches all of the tables. So if there's something specific you're looking for and forget where you saw it, you can definitely take advantage of that global search that is available here in the mobile administration. Next, I'm going to kind of go in here to our file menu. Notice you have all the same options available under file that you would in your standard MediMizer client. So I'm going to start at the equipment that's most common.
Tanya, Can I ask something about that last? Did I see there was a new view being developed? You don't have to say much about that, but is that something I caught in development, that there's going to be another view available at the?
There will be another view available. Currently, the two you have is that administration and the relational. We are working on more of like a technician's view, maybe like their recent work and things like that. So we are working
Great,
on another additional
great. That's
background view for
thanks.
that login. Yeah.
Thank you.
All right. So I came into the equipment list and again, I got there, I went to file, I went to equipment, and you can see it brings me into the equipment list. Notice you have options for search, for searching data and views. So if you have created a search, this is showing up in all my webinars. Let's see. So if you created a search and you did save that, you wanted to save that search so that you don't have to build it each and every time. You can save your views and the views do come over. Now, if you're an existing MediMizer customer and you're using the client, frequently asked is, will I lose my views? No, any views that you have in your MediMizer client application will transfer into the mobile administration. Keeping in mind that MediMizer is the exact same database structure in the background. You're not having a conversion done. If you are running this on premise, you can run it at the same time that you run your client application. So you will definitely, have the ability, you're not losing your data. There's no conversion to be done. It works simultaneously with the existing client. It's just becoming familiar with the new application. Doing a search. So I'm going to start with my equipment list. I want to narrow it down to a specific facility. Now, you'll notice that I can narrow it down at the top section. The great thing about the mobile is you can also do column filtering. So I'm going to first narrow it down to a specific facility. And notice as I start typing, it starts narrowing down my options. Unlike the scroll list that you had in the client, now you can, once you start typing, it starts narrowing it down. And I'm just going to filter and for everything for a facility code that begins with an H. And then once my database is loaded here, I have my list populated. I can scroll down. I can see now for that facility that I'm looking at 4,100 records, give or take, right? So I can then, if I wanted to do an additional filtering or sorting, maybe I just want to see items that fall under a specific manufacturer. So let's say I'm going to go narrow it down to some of the GE equipment. So now I'm going to narrow it down to my manufacturer. If I wanted to also narrow it down to a specific model, I could do that. And the same thing for, departments, etc. You could go to each column and we'll just say here, right now I'm at 481 items. I'm going to narrow it down to these suction regulators. And you can see here that now I'm down to that 155. So again, you can filter these. You have the option. You can export this data directly into Excel. When you choose that option, when it comes up, you're just going to choose where do you want to save that on your personal computer and give it a name. So I'm not going to really export that right now. I'm going to go ahead also and customize the menu. If you're not familiar with customizing your lists in the client view, we have the option available here in the mobile administration also. On your left, these are all of your available columns that you can show. On the right, you'll notice all of the columns that you're currently showing. If there's columns that you do not want to see, perhaps I don't want the asset number and I don't want the manufacturer code, I can highlight both of those and then I can take those off. And I say I am going to keep the manufacturer description model. Again, I can take off the items that I don't want to see, add items that I do want to see. Maybe I want to see if the device has an alarm. So I can move that over to here. It'll show up in the bottom. And now I can move it up and down in the list to where I want it to appear in the column. So if I wanted it at the very top, I can click the double arrow and it'll position it at the very top of my columns, or if I wanted to, maybe I want to know if it has an alarm after the model information, I can place it there. Once you have everything adjusted and set up, you just click OK. And now you'll have the view with the columns in the order that you want to see them. And then just that reminder that you can save this view. So if this is your preferred preference when you come into the equipment list and you save this view, I'm going to go ahead and just do it as a test, put in the description. Just to give you an example of once I save that, again, if this is my default view, I want to see this every time I come into the equipment list. I can come into that view tab, highlight that specific view and mark it as my default view. So now every time I come in to that equipment list, it's going to default to this view. But you also have the ability, if that's not the view you want to see, at any time you can just clear search and be back to your original information, populating all the data. All of your lists can be filtered by rights. I'm not going to go over rights today, but you can definitely filter what each person sees based on their rights. You can determine if they can only see their data or only data at their facility. So what the end user sees will be based on the rights that you configure when you're setting up your employee records. I'm going to go into one of the equipment forms. Here I'm looking at a specific piece of equipment. Notice I'll have the information up here in the top left corner. I also have some icons over here on the right. And these icons, basically, if you hover your mouse over them, you'll get the quick little tool tip. It can show you if you wanted to see work order expenses for this piece of equipment, if you wanted to see any parts used for this equipment based on that model. You can pull up that information. If you wanted to see all of the equipment service information, you can pull up the equipment service information report. I'll go ahead and run it for this device just to kind of show you what populates. Here's your complete list of your service information. And this particular report, you can, go through the different pages. You can save the report locally. You can also then email those reports out if you wanted to do so. So I'm going to go ahead and close out of the report. You'll also notice work orders. So if you have any other work orders open and closed for that device, you can click on that button and see the available work orders or the past work orders that you worked on that device. You can also highlight one of those specific work orders and hit select. Notice when I do that, it's jumping me in directly to the mobile work order application and explicitly for that work order. So now I have two tabs open. The equipment tab that I was working in, and then it brought me over to that work order tab that I selected so I could come in and view any information, add any notes, or make any changes to it at that time. Part of the advantages of working in this mobile admin, you're used to working Windows side by side, but now with the new platform, you have the ability, if you're on a record, so if I'm on the equipment and I want to see that model, I can right mouse click. I can either open it in a new tab, which would bring up a new tab, or I can open it in a new window. So if I want to have that familiar experience of working side by side on different records and viewing them in the same screen, I can go through and make those adjustments and see. I can have as many tabs open and size them as needed to go through and be working in multiple areas of the application at once. I'm going to go ahead and close that window. So anywhere that you do see, pointing out that if you do see that blue font, those are the sections where you will have that ability to open, and it will directly link you to those areas in the application, so you can go directly to those sites. And we're going to go over the basics of an equipment record, your control number, your manufacturer information. model, class, vendor. We will go through how to add a piece of equipment. We'll show that in a couple different ways. But basically, you have your control information, your manufacturer, vendor, your facility, your location information, who's going to service the device, and then your equipment status, if it's in service, if it's been retired. Notice at the bottom, you have the blue kind of turquoisey text. Those are all user-defined fields in your application. So if you look at my screen, but you don't have those fields available, those are user-defined fields that you can set up and use in the application. Typically, your administrative person would come through and set those up for you. But you do have on the first main screen 6 available user-defined fields that you could enter, track, and report data on. And notice from the piece of equipment, if I needed to add a work order for that device, you do have that add work order option directly right here. And when I do that, again, it brings me up into the new tab. Notice for this particular record, when I went to add that work order, it shows me I already have another open work order. At this time, I could go to that selected work order, or I could continue adding a new work order. So I'm just going to go ahead and continue adding that new work order. And then I would just fill it in. I would say, who's the person requesting the work order and what is the service requested? And at this point, I'm ready to save it. All it needs to know is who's requesting it and what are they requesting. You could change the work order type. You could, update the requested on date and time. You could update, if it was a different control number or anything like that. Or if you knew a different location, you could also type in the new location information. And you could also then update that information. So once you save your changes on this form and you perform your services, you close out your work order, then it would automatically update that equipment location information for you. So again, directly from the work order, you don't have to change it on the equipment record. Also, you can say, well, I was here, this is where I found it, update the location, and it will update that location in your MediMizer application. I'm going to go ahead and go back over. All right, location information. Your facility department, your cost center information will be added based on your department. So when you start in MediMizer, you want to start by building out your facilities, building out your departments. Then when you're adding in your equipment, you will go through and you'll be able to just select those from the list. And when you're building out your departments, you'll be prompted for a cost center number. If you're not using cost centers at your site, that's absolutely okay. You could use create one generic cost center number and use that across the board. You have the ability here, again, your locations, building room 4. If you have RTLS codes, you can track that information. If it's part of a system, you could put in the parent tag information here also. Your asset management information is the third tab over, but notice that you can determine here if it's a rental or a loaner or a test device. And I'm going to touch base on test device just for a moment here. In the application on the work orders, when you're adding your services, if you want to track the test equipment that was used when you were performing your PM or your safety inspection, you can add your equipment into your MediMizer database and mark it as a test device. When you go to add that service to your work order, you can then also associate the test equipment that you used during that service, and that will also show up in history. We'll also check due dates on that. So if you went to add a service onto a work order for a test device that was overdue for calibration, overdue for its own inspection, you would get that warning message to say, hey, your test equipment is overdue. Do you want to, continue with this selection? Your purchase information. Purchase date, cost, placed in use, your requisition, POs, the owning department. So you could have the owner department may be different from the actual location, and you can determine that and set it separately here if that's the case. Your depreciation information, that's really going to be based on when you're putting in the life expectancy. You can set that up at your class and model. And with your purchase dates, this is going to automatically come through and let you know, okay, well, this particular device has a 10-year expectancy, and this would be your recommended replacement date based on your purchase date. We'll do all those calculations for you. If you have your dollar figures in there, we'll also calculate that depreciation for you. We track your warranty information, and then you'll notice you have 6 additional user-defined fields on the asset management tab. So again, these are fields that you can use to track additional information. If there's data that you're wanting to track and you don't see a specific field in MediMizer, you set these fields up and track the information that you want to use. Coming over to the computer tab, you could even track your servers and workstations in MediMizer, but equipment level as well. So if this is equipment level, I could put in what the application name is. I could put in my IP address, MAC address, switch, if it's a wireless connection. If it stores PHI, if it's virtual, again, take your time to explore and look at all the data that you can capture here. All this data is reportable. So we have different list views that you can run and pull up to see if you wanted to look for anything on a specific IP address. You have the ability to do that, and it would give you a list of all those devices. I'm going to skip the IT section because the majority of the customers are using computer. If you want a more detailed, in-depth section on IT, again, this is really more if you're storing those your servers as assets, your workstations as assets. This is where, we could expand more into this. But I'm going to go ahead and switch over to the scheduling now. Notice you have your cycle start date, and you have your inspection schedules and your intervals. When your equipment is due is always going to be based on what your equipment cycle start is set and what the interval. So this one is a June, so it'll come every June based on having a 12-month interval. And if it was a 6-month interval, of course, then it would come twice a year based on that June inspection. You have the option if for any reason this equipment is still active, but you needed to skip any inspections for this one, you could do it, or if it's in storage. These are also the skip inspection. These are things where you can set your service verbs and codes up and have those automatically update those records on work orders. You wouldn't have to come through here and do it individually, but you could. So work orders are the best way to properly document, where, what was done and why it was changed, but you can come in and manually change them. And this is where you would set that up and make any changes for your schedules. The evaluation information, this is risk-based. This is really just for viewing at the individual equipment level. You'd really want to do your risk evaluation at your class and model. But this is where you can set up, it's all user defined, so you can set up and determine, if you want to track the function. You can build these pick lists to choose from. So when you build those lists, and I say I want the function that this is going to be patient related or other, you'll notice that it's going to automatically start filling in those scores that I determined what the value was going to be. And it'll automatically start applying that score and setting up those risk priorities for you based on the information and the selections that you make over here. So again, you see your score adjusting, and then at that point, when you determine what your final score value is, you could come through here and adjust the priority of whether it's a 1, 2, 3, 4, or 5. Specifications is just another option, another feature that is available for you to set up. I do have a specification set up, but again, this is just an example. If you had a long line of items that you wanted to go through and record for this particular device, different values, you could create a template, associate it at the class level, and then fill in the individual values for, the individual equipment records if you wanted to do so. If you had a contract on the device, it would not be grayed out. You'd be able to select it, but that just shows you an overview of your contract and what you have available. You have the links option. You can add links. When you add a link, you can add a link to a file, an image, or to a website. So we're on an equipment record. So if you had a service history report that you wanted attached to this specific device, you could do that either at the equipment or at the work order. And you would be able to view that link from both. So if I attach that link over to my work order, when I come into the equipment record, I can view it. If I attached it at the equipment, vice versa, I would be able to view it on the work order. So it does, show you the chain of links that you add even from the class and model. Scenarios that you might want to use go to a web link or a URL is your contacts. Maybe you have your vendors in here, or your vendors, and you want to put in a contact or something directly to their website, you can put in that link directly over to their website. And then of course, any notes, you can do notes in here. If you're on one of your portable devices like a phone or a tablet, when you click in the notes section, you can click on your microphone on the device and start speaking, and it'll type out the information for you as you go along. You don't have to manually type it on the device's keyboard. So this is just a good option for you. And let's see here. I'm going to pause one moment for questions. I do see a little red button there, and I'm going to go back to the main. Do we have any questions coming in, Mark, before I move forward? Okay, sounds good. Then I'm going to pause for just one moment here. Let's see. All right, thank you. Sorry about that. I just had to wake my sleeper in the background there. All right, so this is a basic overview of the equipment. So we talked about adding in a piece of equipment and showing the different ways of adding in a new piece of equipment. If I'm on an existing equipment record, I have an option. I can copy that existing form. So we're just going to say, for example, if I wanted to add another patient room device, I could do that. So basically, I'm going to make another one of this exact thing, but it's going to have a new control number, maybe a new serial number and a new location. So I could go into an existing record and then I would click copy. Then it's going to let you know that you're creating a duplicate record, to please check your facility department purchase information and other location and asset information. So here's where I can put in that new control number, and I'm going to go ahead and save it. Now it's going to save that record, and it's going to, now I'll be on that record. Now this is where I have that opportunity to go through, put in my serial number, change any location information that I wanted to change. Notice, since I didn't fill in the serial number is not required, but it is important. You shouldn't leave it blank. So I'm going to go over here to location. I'm going to keep it in the current location. For this particular device, I have the new control number in, and I'm ready to save. So I'm just going to go ahead and save this work order. Now, once I save that, you can see it brings me back out to the equipment list. I could add another piece of equipment at this point, clicking add. If I wanted to add something new, I don't want to add the same device. So if I click add from the equipment list, everything's blank. So notice I would need to go through and fill out the information. And so if I fill out the information, I'm going to go ahead and add a control number. We're going to go do this, 54321. And then I'm going to select a manufacturer because I've already built out my manufacturers. I've already built out my models and vendors. So I'm just going to select a manufacturer that I have from the list. And let's go with this one here. So once I've selected my manufacturer, now I'm going to select my model. So I'm going to use my lookup button. And notice it's going to show me the models that already exist for that manufacturer. So I can see my models already in here. I'm going to go ahead and make that selection. And then you can see that the class and vendor is automatically filled in because those are choices and selections that I made when I was creating that model. So I don't have to fill it in again here. It's going to automatically populate for me. All right, and now I can put a preferred servicer. If I wanted to set up a preferred servicer, I can set it up for a team, a vendor, or an employee. I can do this on an individual piece of equipment. I can do it at a model. I can do it at a class, and I could also even do it for a department or for an entire facility. But I'm going to go ahead for this one. I'm going to set this one up for an employee. I'm going to look up a list of my available employees. I think this one should go to Bob. I'm going to select that. So now when a work order comes out for this device, Bob would automatically fall under his list of work orders. It would automatically be assigned to him. So if he did a quick search for anything assigned to him, any work order generated for this device would populate. It's a new piece of equipment, so I'm going to leave it in service. Now, once I fill out this first form, maybe I think I'm done, right? So I'm going to go ahead and hit save. Well, notice it pops me over to the location and says, hey, you can't save this yet, right? You have to put in a facility and a department. We have to know where the device is located. So I'm going to go ahead and make that selection. I'm going to put it into this facility, and I am going to select a department. All right. So once I have it assigned, now I'm going to go ahead and put in my asset information. I'm going to say I went ahead and I purchased this device today. If I have my purchase cost information, I'll fill that in. Let's say we got a special on this one. And we'll go through. I'm not going to set up, I want to keep the department owner the same. I'm going to keep the depreciation information. I'm going to leave all that alone because that's set at model. And then you can notice that it does default your warranty information out to 1 year from the date that you're putting in the device. So I'm going to go ahead and save that record. Once I save that record, that's it. That's all that's required for creating a brand new piece of equipment in MediMizer. And then I'm going to go ahead and show you. So that was two options. One option was if I'm on an existing record and I'm adding the exact same type of device, I can come in here and click the copy button. It will then make a duplication of that exact record, and I just need to update the control number, serial number, and the location information. All right, I'm going to go ahead and go back to the equipment list. That was the other way that we showed, is that directly from the equipment list, I can go to the bottom of the list and click add. And this brings up that blank form that you can fill in with all the information based on the selections that you already have available in your MediMizer application. Now, the third option for adding in new equipment is, if you notice under work orders, you do have an option for quick entry. Quick entry, you'll have 3 tabs: add equipment, add work orders, and add services. I'm going to start with the add equipment just to show the difference from doing it from the equipment form versus doing it in quick entry. When I'm in the quick entry, I'm on the add equipment tab. I'm going to go ahead here and click on add a piece of equipment in the top left. I'll click in here and I'll start putting in that control number. And I can tab into the next field. I could put in my serial. If I'm tracking asset numbers separately, fill in that information. I'm going to go ahead and select my facility. Now, I am logged in as Elvis Presley, and as Elvis, I only have rights to see one facility. So that is all that's populating in my list when I'm going to add that new device, because I don't have rights to see the other facilities. So it's going to default that. Now, when I go to select my department, it's going to show me the departments under that facility. So I'm going to go ahead and select which department I'll be adding the device into. And you'll see there that the cost center did automatically populate based on that department selection. Now we're going to come in here to the manufacturer. Let me see who I want to use this time around. Let's see, let's go down here. Let's do that one. And let me pick up the model here for that manufacturer. This is a good one. All right. So now I put in my manufacturer, model, vendor name, everything populated for me based on that model selection. PO, location, room, floor. So I'm just kind of showing here, at this point, I've entered everything required. I could save and be done. But I'm going to scroll across here just so you can see, where you can put in that purchase date. You can put in the in-use date, your warranty information, requisition numbers, your software revisions, any, of your user-defined fields. That's what all this the green tinted teal text columns are for. Those are all your user defined. So again, just to kind of give you that idea that you have a lot more information that you can fill in, but these are the only items that are required. Now, once I add that first device, the one great thing about the quick entries, if you're adding 10 of the same thing, once I click add, notice that everything is duplicated. Whatever I filled in on that first line, that information will be duplicated and carried down. So all I need to fill in is the new control number, and then again, change that location information if it is different. So here we go. And then I'm going to go ahead and stop here at 2 devices, but this just gives you, now I've added the equipment at this point into the quick entry. Quick entry is a temporary storage location, so there is no, if you do not hit save and you cancel your changes at this point, obviously nothing gets saved or put in the database. If for some reason you stop on this screen and you leave and you come back tomorrow and the screen is gone, your changes are not saved. So you definitely, when you're working in quick entry, you want to go through and save your changes when you're done before moving off onto your next project. If I was done and all I wanted to do was add the equipment, I could hit save right now and it will close out and take me back into the regular application. Nothing else to do here, right? But say I wanted to also add the work orders at the same time. Well, once I'm done filling out the equipment information, I would come over here to that work order tab, add work orders. Now at this point, I don't want to add them individually. I just added 10 pieces of equipment. I don't want to have to add 10 individual work orders. So when I get to that work order tab, I'm just going to do it as a power add. The power add is going to say, hey, is it for the equipment you just added in quick entry? It sure is. So I'm going to come down here and go next. And now one time I would fill out this form to say, when was it requested? Who requested it? What type of work order is this? It's going to default to the new equipment inspection because it knows I just added those records into MediMizer. The service request is going to be filled in for you. At this point, again, you could assign this work order to a preferred servicer. At this point, I'm not assigning the equipment a preferred servicer. I'm only assigning this work order a preferred servicer. If I had any work order notes, I could put those in. Whatever notes I type in here will apply to every single work order. So whether I'm adding 2 or 100, whatever note I put in here from this screen, it's going to duplicate that information across the board to all of the work orders that you've created. Once I fill in the service requested information, I come in here and I click add work orders to quick entry. Now you'll notice it's going to create those new work orders. And at this point, if I've assigned them to somebody else is doing the work, I would want to save. And then the work orders are going to show up. They can come through, close them out later. And they would close them out in their mobile work order to show that they've done the work. Now, if I'm the technician, I've already done the safety inspections on the new equipment. I'm getting ready to put it out into the field. I've added the equipment on the equipment tab. I went ahead and created the work orders, but I'm gonna close them now too. I know I did the inspection, I did the safeties on them. I'm gonna come to the ad service. I'm gonna go through this quickly. I'm doing it as a power ad. Again, you need a power ad so it knows it's for the work orders you just added into quick entry. Since it's the work orders I just added, then I'm gonna go next. By going next, again, I am gonna say who I am and what I did on the work order. And I'm gonna say that I did the work. Let me find me in here. EP. All right, so I'm gonna say what I did. I'm gonna say the amount of time that I used on the work orders. And this was a new equipment inspection, so I'm gonna go ahead and put in my verb code for what I have set up in my MediMizer, which I believe is 30 for a new equipment inspection. And let's go here. All right, select it. And then if you're tracking cause codes, I'm gonna go ahead, I wanna close this work order, I'm done. I can update my work order status. I'm just gonna say that I was completed. And then if I had any additional notes, again, the notes that I apply in here will apply to every work order that I'm creating. Once I fill out what I've done, I'm gonna say add the services, and notice you'll see the 2 services for 2 work orders for 2 pieces of equipment. Then I'm gonna go through. At this point, I'm done. I've added the equipment, added the work orders, and done the work. So I'm gonna go ahead and save. So I'm gonna get the process bar and it's gonna let me know, okay, you added services, you added work orders, and you added pieces of equipment. And it lets me know the amount of time that it took to process the information. So I'm gonna say, okay. All right, so I'm back to the blank quick entry form, but basically I'm gonna go here first. I'm gonna go to the equipment list. I'm running through this rather quickly, but just to I'm gonna clear here. And now really what I wanna look for is I wanna see those ones I just created, right? So I'm gonna come in here and let me do that they were created on, and I'm gonna say it was created today. So I'm gonna do a quick search in the equipment list. So now you can see those records that I added today. So these are the 4 equipment records that I've done during the practice. Now, again, I could go into one of those records. I can highlight it and click select, or I could go directly into it. If I want to see if there was a work order for that, again, there we go. We can see I did the work, 15 minutes, and I did my incoming inspection. Now, if I had any results saying, that I ran a safety, that data would come over also. I kept it simple for today's training purposes, but any results that you add for your pass and fail, any check procedures that you have associated to the equipment records, you would be able to use those procedures and see the results also. The next place I'm going to go is to my work order list. So I'm going to go in here to the work order list. And now that I'm in here, I want to do that same thing. So I want to see what was not the facility, sorry. I want to go to what was created or modified by me. So I'm going to first search that. I could narrow it down to today, but these are some of the work orders that I had created. Let's not do it. Let me see here. What do I want to search for? Created by. So let me customize my list real quick. Sorry about that. Let's see. All right, I'm going to put my created on over here so I can filter there. Now, notice that the work order list has a little different section up at the top for your filtering. This is going to be changing. This is going to look more like the equipment list when we were in there. So these filtering options that you see in here, it's going to look more like what we saw earlier in the equipment form, where you can, build your and or statements. All right, so I'm going to say here that it was created on. I'm going to look for things created today. Come on, let's filter here. If it's cancel, let me backspace there 1 second. I'm going to filter for here. Basically, you can come in here, you can see that I can come in, I can do a filter based on the dates, based on the service requested, based on the facility. If I wanted to filter a specific model, I can say, let me just see these models and say, okay. This is very, very familiar to what you're used to seeing in Excel, to have these column filters and sorts available for you up at the top. So you can see that data in here and view those work orders. And then again, when you're ready to work on one of those work orders, you can just double click it and it'll take you directly into the work order form where you can come to your service information tab, add a service, put in, it automatically knows who you are because you already logged in. So you would just put in your service code and the amount of time used. Now, it filled in the service code for me because this is a scheduled work order. So it knows that I'm out doing my inspections. So this is my code 10. I would put in my time. And then I could also add my results and test equipment here. And I'm going to show that a little bit later. Actually, we're going to move to that here in just a moment. So I'm going to save that one. And notice here that I am I'm in mobile work order and I'm in the mobile work order list. So again, a list, if I wanted to do some more filtering, I can show the options at the top, do the filters by the facilities, or I can do the column filtering up here at the top. I'm going to take a brief pause to see if there's any questions.
There are no questions. We do have a topic after the class is over. We can kind of test something, but no new questions.
Okay, great. All right, so that's how you would add equipment. We covered adding equipment, one equipment at a time, copying an existing record, and doing quick entry. So now let's talk about work orders. We talked about customizing list views. I'm not going to go over that again in the mobile admin, but notice in the mobile work order, this is what the technicians will be seeing on a regular basis. You can customize these lists also. So you could come in here, customize the list. You'll notice any options that are not available that you want to add to your list. You could highlight, maybe I want to see if it has a last service date. I could select that column and drag it over to my list. But I'm going to go ahead and just bring over my class description. And I'm going to set it right here next to the model description. Notice I get that double facing arrow up and down right where I'm going to drop that column. And then once I drop that column, now you can see that I've dropped it. It falls right there where I want it to appear. So the difference from the mobile admin and the mobile work order for customizing the list, let me move this bar out of my way, is that it's a click and drag in the mobile work order versus moving them up and down in order that I showed a little bit earlier in the mobile administration. So if I have my work order number, maybe I want the control number to be the first column. I'm gonna move that and pull that over there. And just by dragging it over into that location and dropping it there, once I have those double arrows, you can see it adjusts by the control number. If I'm a technician and I don't need to log into the mobile administration, you would have a different URL for logging only into the mobile work order. So if you just want to get logged into mobile work order and start doing some inspections, you can do that. And you would just simply log into the mobile work order and you'll be presented with this screen that you can come in and start working and doing, any filtering that you want to do. You can also export the data to Excel, and you can also save the defaults here. So if you're logged in and you have your columns set up the way you want to see them, you can save that as a default. One thing I'm going to point out though is that this particular view in the mobile work order is stored in your cookies. So if you clear out all your cookies, you're going to be clearing out these saved views.
Does that saved view save the filters as well, including the include closed?
I need to double check on that, Mark. I
Okay.
don't recall on that. I
I
have to.
didn't mean to throw a trick question. Okay, good.
Yeah,
We'll
you
come back
did.
to that.
Come on. Yeah, I have to double check. I do believe it does, Mark, but I have to double check. It saves the defaults what you have in here. But we can confirm. And if
We'll
Chandler's
confirm.
testing,
I think it does,
yeah,
so that if the
yeah, I
technician
believe
works a
so. And
certain way,
if
it does.
Chandler's
Yeah.
testing in the background, he can throw a answer to that question in there. All right, so if I'm in the work order list, I have everything set up. I save my defaults. If I'm a technician and I'm going to be doing the work orders, I don't need to add a new work order. They're already in here. They're assigned to me. There's two options. And one is I can view my list filter, right? I want to find a specific control number or a specific work order number filter for that. Once I find that device, then I'm going to go into that work order. When it comes in, notice I came into the main tab. At the top right, here you'll see that you can add links. You can reserve a part. You can see if there's any other open work orders, and you can view all of the service information for this piece of equipment. If I was on an area, that would be the same thing. You can schedule your areas in MediMizer for inspections and view the services for your areas the same way you can your equipment. All right, so I'm putting in my service information now. I want to go over to the service information tab, and here's where I'm going to come in and say I want to add a service. It recognizes who I am. It knows it's a scheduled inspection. I'm going to put in some time used, which I could put in the time now, or I could go in, look at my procedures, perform my test, and I can go through pass or fail. I can record any readings. So if I'm taking a reading, I can put in the values. If I needed to add a note, I could add a line below this. One moment. Thank you. Sorry, I had to clear my throat there. All right, so I can go through and individually ask pass or fail. I'm going to go ahead and click pass rest. Notice if I do a pass rest though, it's not going to automatically pass anything that I'm supposed to take a reading, right? I have to put in that reading and then it would automatically mark it as a pass or fail. And then if I were to add a line below something, it would automatically mark it as a note. All right, so I'm gonna, at this point, so I wanted to go back and add my time. Instead of saving it closed, you can go directly back to that service form, and now you can adjust your time, and then you could go back to the work order form if you wanted to see, a list of everything that you had done. So your work order list takes you to the main list. If you're in a service, it takes you, you have the option to go back directly to the service or go back to the work order form. So for this particular one, I'm going to say I'm done. I'm going to go ahead and save that one. I did save it open, so you can see here now I have it listed, it's showing, but it is still an open work order. I did not close it out. And I'm going to go back into that work order briefly just to show you. When I go to a work order, I come in on the main tab. I need to go to my service information and then click add service. All right, I'm going to go out of this particular work order. As a technician, I'm logged in. I don't want to just look at the data I'm inspecting. I want as few clicks as possible. I'm going to turn on quick inspect. You can do this for scheduled or unscheduled work orders. I already know the information about my equipment because it's showing me in my list view. So I already know the control number. I already know the type of device it is. I know my work order number. So when I get to that device, now I'm going to click on one of those work orders. And notice I'm not on that main tab. It directly takes me into that service information. It's already filled in. I can put in my results, shows me the procedures I'm using, come in here. I'm going to pass everything. At this point, if I was done, boom, save closed. If I need to go back and put in my minutes, I could do it. As I'm working, if I'm not showing closed, the items will just start falling off my list. So as I do more and more work orders, if I had 20 items or 50 items assigned to me as I do them, they're just going to start falling off my list. So again, if I was searching for any items assigned just to me, assigned to me or my teams, anything I created have already serviced, I can have that filtered down. And again, when you're closing them, they'll start falling off the list. If you wanted to search it, go back into history and see other items for any reason. You can also show the closed items if you would like to do so. I'm just going to go through a couple more just to give you an idea and do a couple different scenarios. So I'm adding my service. I'm going to come back in. I'm going to put in my results for this one. This one I'm working on a defibrillator. So I'm going through, checking the items, everything passed. But I'm going to go back into that work order form. I want to see that information. All right, I have everything here. Well, you know what? I did add a part to this one. So since I have my service listed already, I'm going to go ahead and add a part. Notice it came up with the list of parts that I've already used on that device. Now, if the part is not listed at the top section, you can search it. It will search your entire part database. But the bottom shows you things you've used before for that specific device or that device type, sorry. So I'm going to say that I want to go ahead and use this, and I'm going to use a selected part. Now you could add a new part at this time if you have the rights to do so, but I'm going to go ahead and use a selected part. I have the option now to say how many I used, what the cost was, the extended cost and value and extended charge information, that's going to fill in for you automatically based on other settings in the application that have been configured. We will not be touching base on that today, but if you want to know where all those numbers come from, let us know. We can, get on a session with you to show you that information. So this is the part I'm using, but I'm going to go back into that work order form because, I also used a piece of test equipment on here. So now I can see that part, but I'm going to put in the test equipment that I used also because I want to track that. So by just clicking on that, I see a list of all my test devices. I can filter and sort if I know specifically. I'm just going to go ahead and select one here from my list just to give you an idea. Now I'm in here on the work order service information. I can see the test equipment that was used. I have, those steps that I performed for this procedure. And I showed, that I did my work. And if I needed to adjust, I forgot to put in my times, I can just double click that item and come back in here and adjust that time. And then it will then, update the time on the work order itself. So if you needed to edit one, you just highlight it, or you know, double click it, highlight and edit, or double click it, and you can go in and edit the terminology or the minutes, whatever you needed to adjust on that. But then once you're done, you go through and you hit your save close. So overall, right, we went through just kind of a few things: how to add a piece of equipment, how to add a work order, how to add a service to a work order, an overview of setting up your list views and customizing your list views. We're at our hour for today. I'm gonna leave a few minutes on here for any other questions. Mark said we did have an off-topic question come up that we can cover, but let me just go ahead and get back in here. If you have any questions, anything, questions related to support, questions related to pricing, here's your contact information. Reach out to sales@medimizer.com, support@medimizer.com, and the phone numbers here are listed. Thank you for attending. I appreciate that, and we look forward to hearing from you and seeing you on future webinars. And then Mark, I'll go ahead and switch it up over to you for any questions, and I'll just leave this displayed on the screen for the time being.
You can take the recording off, and I put it in the chat. Just would you try pasting that value to values in the specification? I think I already know what the answer is, that the specification is allowing data entry of 20 characters, even though it's a 40 character field. Do you see the string that I sent you?
I'm in my control panel. I'm trying to stop the recording real quick.